Today, we're diving into the story of a man who was, by all accounts, an absolute master of seduction. But his story has this wild twist that just completely defies logic. They called him the demonic rake, and trust me, his secret weapon was not what you'd think. So picture this. It's the early 1880s, and this young journalist, Gabriele D'Annunzio, shows up in Roman high society. The men there, they barely give him a second look. Why would they? He had no money, zero connections, and to be blunt, they thought he was just plain ugly. They actually felt so safe, they'd happily let him hang around their wives and daughters, thinking, what harm could this gargoyle possibly do? Man, were they wrong. And this is where the paradox just slaps you in the face. On one side, you have the reality of the man. Short, kinda stocky, he's got this splotchy skin and bulging eyes. But then you look at the effect he had on women, and it was the total opposite. They found him hypnotic, alluring, poetic, even spiritual. How does that even happen? What was going on? That's the big question, right? It obviously wasn't his looks. It for sure wasn't his money or his family name. I mean, this guy was a total outsider. So how in the world did he manage to captivate the most desired women in all of Italy? And the answer, well, it's as simple as it is incredibly powerful. It was his voice. His entire power, his whole seductive charm. It was all auditory. It just completely bypassed the eyes and went straight for the ears, creating a kind of attraction that no one was prepared for. So, okay, how did he do it? How did he turn his voice into a weapon? Let's actually break down the mechanics behind this unbelievable verbal power. You know, people who saw this happen all described the exact same thing. In a group, D'Annunzio was just one guy. But the second he got a woman alone, it was like a switch just flipped. His entire personality, his whole demeanor, it would just transform. His voice would suddenly drop, becoming super soft and low, and he'd start speaking with this flowing rhythm, an inflection that was nothing like a normal conversation. People said it was, well, it was almost like listening to music. One woman actually compared it to hearing church bells ringing in the distance. Now think about that for a second. It's a sound that's both calming and impossible to ignore. It just kind of fills your senses and pushes every other thought out of your head. That was the effect of his voice. It was genuinely hypnotic. And that right there, that's the core of his whole technique. D'Annunzio's words weren't really about sharing information. Nope. Their whole purpose was to be a powerful, sensual distraction, basically a drug. A bit like the serpent in the Garden of Eden, his language was designed to get around logic, to flatter you, and to just whip up a storm of emotions. Okay, so this is where the story gets really wild. D'Annunzio takes the exact same technique he had perfected on individuals in private rooms and decides to use it on the masses from a political stage. You can see this clear escalation, right? First, he masters his craft one-on-one. Then, he becomes a genuine war hero in World War I, which makes him famous and gives him this huge platform. And finally, he gets up on these balconies and uses that same hypnotic voice, not just to seduce one person, but to seduce an entire nation, literally changing the course of Italian history. And we actually have firsthand accounts of this. There was an American writer, Walter Starkey, who went to see him speak. And at first, he was not impressed at all. He just saw this short, strange, grotesque little man on a balcony. So he's standing there, a total skeptic. But then, D'Annunzio starts to speak. And just like those women in the salons, Stark was completely captivated. He later wrote that the fascination of the voice just bypassed his critical thinking and penetrated directly into his consciousness. The technique worked just as powerfully on a crowd of thousands as it did one-on-one. Incredible. So after all that, what's the big takeaway here? Because D'Annunzio's story, it really reveals a powerful, almost scary effective formula for seduction and influence. And here it is. This is the secret, boiled right down. The actual words you say, they don't matter nearly as much as the form, the rhythm, the tone, the musical quality. The goal is to get your listener to stop analyzing what you're saying and to get completely lost in how your voice makes them feel. That's the entire game. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard actually takes this a level deeper. He suggests that the real force here isn't just a hypnotic voice. The voice is just the tool. The real power is desire. The words, the tone, that's just the key that unlocks the energy of sensuous desire that's already waiting inside the listener. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. Is seduction something that's done to us by a master of words like D'Annunzio? Or is it a force that's already inside all of us, just waiting for the right voice to call it out? The story of the demonic rake really suggests that the power of our words goes way beyond just communication. It can unlock the most powerful emotions we have.